From ABC News headquarters, this is World News with Charles Gibson.
Good evening. There is no way possible to sugarcoat it. The latest jobs report is awful. It shows unemployment jumped to 8.1% in February. 651,000 people lost their jobs in 1 month. That's more than 32,000 every business day. And adjusted reports for the previous 2 months reveal that 681,000 jobs were lost in December, and that makes that the worst month since 1949. All told, 4.4 million people have lost their jobs since this recession began. And economists say some of those jobs will never come back. Here's Betsy Stark.
My job is to find you work.
Businesses continued to slash jobs at a ferocious pace last month, pushing the unemployment rate to a 25-year high. The number of Americans officially unemployed has now grown to 12.5 million.
And there was no sign in that data that the layoffs and the job losses are suddenly going to come to an end.
My job was eliminated.
The sheer volume of Americans struggling to find work was evident in the lines that snaked down 5 floors and poured out onto the sidewalk at this New York City job fair.
It's a little bit disconcerting to see so many people looking for the same thing that you're looking for.
At the same time.
At the same time. And it just seems to be accelerating by the day.
Also growing, the length of time it now takes to find a job. 1 in 4 unemployed Americans has been out of work more than 6 months. Ellen Valentine lost her job as a hospital administrator 5 months ago and is now thinking about becoming a nurse.
If I have to go back to school, I'll go back to school.
You have a resume. Alexandra Nesterchuk may abandon retailing for a career in the Foreign Service. The government, at least, is hiring.
So you're leaving all options open?
All options open at this point.
I don't think we can be choosy anymore.
Just pull up California.
Across the country, the job cuts are broad as well as deep. But some are faring worse than others. More men are out of work than women. Blacks and Hispanics are losing jobs faster than whites. Economists say the government stimulus plan will help eventually, but can only go so far.
The recession has created a big hole in the economy, and the fiscal stimulus, sort of adds a little dirt to help fill it back in, but probably not enough to dig us out of the hole in total, at least not this year.
One economist calculated today that if Americans continue to lose jobs at the pace we've been seeing over the last 6 months, the unemployment rate will top 10% by June and over 12% by the end of the year. That's why the stimulus plan is so important. If it's successful, those huge job losses should slow down. But for now, Charlie, we are in the teeth of this thing.
All right, Betsy Stark reporting some grim news tonight. Thanks to you. President Obama was in Ohio today. He called the unemployment number astounding. He went to Ohio to tout his stimulus plan, saying it will put millions back to work, starting with 25 police recruits in Columbus, whose jobs were saved with an infusion of stimulus money.
These jobs and the jobs of so many other police officers and teachers and firefighters all across Ohio will now be saved because of this recovery plan, a plan that will also create jobs in every corner of this state.
The president in Ohio today. George Stephanopoulos, the host of This Week, is joining us now. George, he's out talking about the stimulus plan, and some of that money is beginning to flow, but it's really what this administration is going to do about the banks that has the economy in such trouble, isn't it?
Has people real jittery, Charlie. That's exactly right. The president has been out all week long trying to inspire confidence in the economy. That's what today's event was all about. But as you say, they know that there is not going to be any real sense of stability in the markets, any sense that we're coming out of this crisis until people know what is going on with those banks, how big is the problem, how much is it going to cost, and when is it going to be fixed.
So it's been 6 weeks now that he's been in office. How long is it going to take?
We've got a few weeks left, Charlie. The Treasury Department says they're about 75% of the way there, and they've already made deals with banks like Citigroup to provide more capital, but they haven't reached a final decision and don't know yet how much more it's going to take to fix the top 4 or 5 troubled banks. But as I said, they are under pressure to make this decision because they were watching those markets, and they concede that the president might have gone just a little bit too far this week when he told people basically to think about buying stocks over the long term.
All right, George Stephanopoulos down in Washington. Thanks to you. And George's guests, I should say, will be Senators Bayh, Shelby, and McCaskill. As part of our continuing series that we call The Kitchen Table Economy, we have sent reporters to 3 communities across the country to get a sense of how these tough economic times are affecting a family outside Seattle, a small businessman in Garland, Texas, and local officials in Brockton, Massachusetts. We want to get a first-hand look at how all of them are coping. Here's David Muir.
We'll get to where it is that we're going.
Rick Hurst and his wife Lori have been married a year, but in at least one way, the honeymoon for this Seattle couple is long over. Both have lost solid jobs with Microsoft, Lori in September, and then Rick in January. Now they're watching every penny.
We did everything right. We kept our debt down. We didn't buy more house than we could afford. We lived very, frugally.
The family has cut back on everything. No more nights out. Lori buys clothes by the pound at Goodwill. Their full-time job now is looking for a job.
I'm pretty sure you have my resume on the pile.
Lori has made nearly 100 inquiries.
Some of them are resumes and some of them are online applications and that sort of thing.
So far, nothing.
Break a leg.
Yeah. See you later.
In Garland, Texas, Jerry Cook's family has been making hats for 40 years. Selling cowboy hats in the Lone Star State has always been a moneymaker, but skyrocketing costs for raw materials and the bankruptcy of his #1 retailer has forced Jerry's hand.
And all of a sudden, I can't afford these people, so I have to cut my workforce better than a third. And a lot of these people, gosh, they had been with me 17, 18 years.
12 workers were let go, even as others come by every day looking for work.
Well, we lost so many people, half the factory. We have the owner who has stepped into a position, putting hats on racks, filling orders, doing the shipping.
Brockton, Massachusetts is a small city with big problems. With its manufacturing jobs all but gone and tax revenue with it, the city is about to drastically cut its workforce.
Maybe as many as 300 people on the city side, and that as many as 180 public safety people, police and fire, and that's in addition to the ones we've already not backfilled on jobs.
7 cadets graduate from the police academy next week, but there are no badges waiting for them. And the mayor says he'll have to lay off nearly half of his 169 firefighters. Heather Doughton fears she and her husband will be among them.
We both got hired together, so if we get laid off and they lay off our entire class, we get laid off together. And, it's tough. We have a mortgage, we have 3 kids, so what are we going to do?
Her question is the same one we heard from Brockton, Massachusetts, to Garland, Texas, to Seattle, Washington. And in the coming weeks and months, we'll continue to check back with these families and others, how they're dealing with this uncertain economy, Charlie.
David Muir reporting tonight. Well, it is looking likely that the case against the accused swindler Bernard Madoff will never come to trial. That's because all signs now point to a plea deal in the case. Our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, is following the story here with details on new developments. So what do we know about the plea deal?
Well, Charlie, in the last hour, a federal judge filed papers indicating he will accept a guilty plea from Bernard Madoff next Thursday in a Manhattan courtroom, and he's put a call out for all victims to come and testify and give their thoughts. We don't know the details of the deal, but certainly it will end his luxurious house arrest in his $7 million Manhattan penthouse. The amount of time that he will serve in prison is not known, but at age 70, federal prosecutors say he's unlikely to ever get out of prison alive.
And Brian, if he goes to prison and he takes the plea deal, does that end the investigation? Because a lot of people wonder, was his wife involved? Were his children involved? Were other people co-conspirators in this?
Right, exactly. We're told most certainly not. The criminal investigation is continuing. New evidence apparently indicates several co-conspirators who were involved with Madoff, despite his plea that he acted alone in an effort apparently to save his accomplices and his family. That investigation continues. In some plea deals like this, family members are excluded from further prosecution. We're told that may not be the case here with Madoff.
All right, Brian Ross reporting. Thanks very much to you. Overseas to the troubled nation of Zimbabwe, where the prime minister has been injured in a car crash. Morgan Tsvangirai is recovering, but his wife was killed when a tractor-trailer swerved onto their side of the road and hit their car. There are also worries that the crash was deliberate. Tsvangirai has been a longtime critic and rival of Zimbabwe's dictator, Robert Mugabe. Secretary of State Clinton had a moment during her visit to Europe today that can best be described as lost in translation. Saying President Obama wants to reset the U.S.-Russian relationship, Secretary Clinton presented her Russian counterpart with a special reset button. The word reset translated to Russian.
We worked hard to get the right Russian word. Do you think we got it?
You get it wrong.
I got it wrong.
It should be перезагрузка. And this says перегрузка, which means overcharge.
That's right. The button said overcharge, not reset. Oops. And the Russian foreign minister, a good sport, said he'd keep the button on his desk anyway.